Seattle News Weekly from Fox 13.
It is Thursday, so it means another time of Seattle News Weekly to go more in depth about the biggest news of the week. Joining me today, reporter Lauren Donovan. Lauren, thank you for joining me right now. Yeah. So, of course, the big topic that a lot of people are talking about across the nation and here at home is the assassination of Charlie Kirk. And so this conservative icon on campus, obviously everybody by now knows that he was shot and killed on Utah Valley University yesterday. And boy, we were in the newsroom together when the news broke yesterday, and there was a silence in the room. We knew it was a monumental moment, and it was not a good moment, obviously. No matter what, I just want to make it clear that political assassinations, political violence, absolutely unacceptable, no matter what your beliefs are. So I just want to first and foremost say that. But I remember looking at you, and you just had this look on your face because you said, hey, videos are popping up immediately. I didn't see the graphic nature of it, but you did.
And so, the context of kind of what we were doing yesterday, I mean, really this eclipsed everything that we were going through news-wise. We had actually a pretty busy news day. And then I heard one of our producers go, okay, I'm going to put this in breakers, send this out to the newsroom. There's talk of this. We're seeing videos of students, folks that were at that rally at Utah Valley just scattering. And somebody had said Charlie Kirk was shot. So we're seeing these videos, and there's so many manufactured videos now with AI and whatnot. So we really wanted things verified. And then more and more information started coming out. And then this one video, most of you, I hope, have not seen it, but it was a really, what we would call in the business, like a tight shot. Like you could see from his chest up, and you could see where exactly he was hit. There was so much blood. We see a lot of graphic videos here that we don't share with our viewers for obvious reasons, but that was probably one of the most graphic videos and disturbing videos I'd ever seen. So I came up to you, I was like, hey, you don't need to see this, But
it's traumatizing, it's traumatizing, and already you have some calls from people who are saying those videos need to be taken down for the respect of the family. He's got 2 young kids, got a wife, so we'll see what happens with those. But again, it just prolific instantly. That video just went out, and it just shocked the nation, really. And we've had people locally here just reacting to this, right? So we wanted to talk about that. We want to talk about the suspect, the latest hunt for the suspect. We also want to go into local reaction and kind of who Charlie Kirk was and why he became so famous in the conservative side, especially among young people. So those are the 3 things I wanted to dive into you with today.
Yeah, can do.
Just 31 years old, the founder of Turning Point USA. A lot of people, I think, Lauren, didn't know who Charlie Kirk was until really social media. He went on YouTube, but it was really TikTok. And even if you didn't, even if you weren't a conservative, you're seeing these videos pop up. He's getting millions and millions of views. And one of the things that he did that day when he was killed, he was doing the thing that made him famous, which was going to college campuses. In the beginning, very hostile environment where a lot of colleges did not want him on campus. That kind of turned around after he became really famous. But the whole point was he sat under a tent and wanted to debate people he did not agree with.
Yeah. I mean, and he's coming in, obviously a conservative firebrand to so many of these campuses. We know he was here at the University of Washington within the last year. And
in 2024, he was
2024, he shows up. This is prime time, May 2024, prime time of the pro-Palestinian protests on campus. The quad at the University of Washington is a sea of tents, 140 estimated tents out there. There were really tense relationships with the folks that were staying in those tents on the campus, even with us in the media, and then let alone he shows up to campus. He has now this following that he has built over time, and he wanted to actually go interact with those pro-Palestinian protesters on campus. So there were some genuine security concerns about him being there, especially in the heart of enemy territory, and on a very, very liberal college campus nonetheless, too, right? So, and I had some notes from when we had covered that event. I was looking over that, especially yesterday, in lieu of everything. I mean, and tensions were really high. There were 2 different protest groups that kind of came together to counter-protest what was going on with him. Police ended up having to deploy pepper spray into the crowd. And we know back then, like UW officials actually had security plans ahead of the event. We were previewing it and the hype and concern building up to the event like days before in our pitch meetings, just knowing it was going to be a big deal. But as you said, he's been known to tour college campuses. That's what he was doing when he was shot and killed. And he's been at Washington State as well. Back when he was at UW, it was part of what he was calling his Live Free tour. But this one was a different offshoot. So part of his big plan was recruiting kids on college campuses, young conservatives, to join his movement and make them feel like they were more connected in a larger network.
One of the things that I've heard from Democrats was that he was so successful on social media and knew how to talk to young people, that he was so successful turning young people into Republicans, that the Democrats were like, where is our Charlie Kirk of the Democrats? They were trying to find that counterpart because he was being so successful. One thing that I saw, and there was a quote from Turning Point USA, they posted a video of Charlie Kirk saying this, and look, he said a lot of the things, I want to be clear, people will not agree with him on that. That's why he was so polarizing, because he had a lot of controversial sayings, and a lot of people don't agree with what he had to say.
And some might even say, to the full extent of hate speech too.
Some people would call it hate speech, but the point though is that he's saying, hey, look, you can call it hate speech, but I'm not going to back down, because I'm going to stay and sit here and say how I feel about things. And one thing he said here, he says, when people stop talking, this is a quote from him, when people stop talking, really bad stuff starts. When marriages stop talking, divorce happens. When civilizations stop talking, civil war ensues. When you stop having a human connection with someone you disagree with, it becomes a lot easier to want to commit violence against that group. I think there's some truth there to that. So if there's anything that we're going to get out of Charlie Kirk, personally, I said, okay, you disagree with somebody, let's just be able to have a civilized conversation, regardless of whether or not you disagree with that person's opinion. And I think if there's any legacy from his death, I just hope that the nation can get to a point where we can all do that, because you don't want any type of political assassination on any spectrum. You don't want it to be on a liberal, you don't want it to be on a conservative, just no one. That shouldn't take place in the United States.
Well, and it's been happening, unfortunately, recently. Think about those two state senators from Minnesota. I mean, one of them targeted in their own homes, right?
Yeah,
and so
this
is happening. And I think this is a genuine concern for anyone in politics, wanting to comment on politics, like being a commentator. And we were talking about earlier this year, there was a Turning Point USA event back at the University of Washington again in May. And so when you think of Charlie Kirk's the founder of this, and he has an umbrella, and there's a number of people, other conservative firebrands that joined in the movement. Riley Gaines, former NCAA swimmer, was one of them, and then Olivia Krolczyk. They're both anti-trans activists, and that's how they self-identify. And that, as an NCAA swimmer, that was really how kind of Riley Gaines got famous, was speaking out against that. So they showed up at the University of Washington to talk, and actually Olivia was supposed to show up January for an event, but they were so concerned about security, they put the kibosh on that. And so she came back with Riley Gaines in May, and that one, there was about 150 protesters outside, and there was one point where like police ripped a trans flag, and there was all this drama leading up to it. But what I think is really interesting is the amount of security that was added for something that was so much smaller than what we saw in Utah yesterday, where this all happened in the open air amphitheater where he was. In fact, back during that event, we were covering it here locally, right? And we reached out to Turning Point USA for some information on security and how they were going to handle this, because heart of UW's campus, they had seen obviously what had happened with Charlie Kirk during his visit 1 year prior. And they said that they had advanced registration for attendees. They were not actually allowing bags into the event whatsoever, and they had an agreed on like no in, no out policy. So once you came to the speaking event, you just couldn't leave. There wasn't like movement, and I think there was only 95 people or so, just under 100, that attended that Riley Gaines event. But even for that one, Hannah, they had like, the presenters were bringing their own security detail in addition to uniformed security and law enforcement that UW was going to provide for them. For 95 in a closed setting, and that's so different. Like listening to the press conference yesterday with the FBI, the local police chief there in Utah said they had 6 officers stationed. And that was, I mean, that crowd was exponentially larger than what we saw on the UW campus. And that just kind of gives us a look into the precautions in hosting any sort of event like this, regardless. Which I think is really interesting. Right. Now all the questions.
And moving forward too, knowing this has happened, and it's a sad state that we have to do this, but any political figure now thinking, okay, I need security, I need to make sure that we are canvassing the area the day before. All this stuff has to happen now after what we've seen happen to Charlie Kirk. Let's go into the local reactions now from local people. Governor Ferguson, sending out a message on X, and he says, saying in part, he says, I condemn the murder of Charlie Kirk in the strongest terms. You have Gavin Newsom. He says, the attack on Charlie Kirk is disgusting, vile, and reprehensible in the United States of America. We must reject political violence in every form. And Gavin Newsom, what's interesting is he has a podcast, and he invited Charlie Kirk recently to Gavin Newsom's podcast.
Oh, really? Okay,
they had a conversation. And I listened to a portion of it. And why I think discussions like that are interesting is because you have two very sharply different people talking to each other.
Very vocal
They're
people, too.
Vocal people.
Yeah.
They are no longer in an echo chamber. And I think that's why it was compelling for viewers to listen to what they both had to say.
Yeah.
And that's why I think Charlie Kirk was so popular, because he was doing that day in and day out. He was sitting next to or standing next to somebody he didn't agree with and having these conversations. So, Gavin Newsom sending that out, they're getting bipartisan, basically reaction saying that this is not acceptable. And then you have President Trump himself. He said, the great and even legendary Charlie Kirk is dead. No one understood or had the heart of the youth in the United States of America better than Charlie. And one of the things that he's been credited with, Charlie Kirk, is that he helped President Trump get to where he is at the age of 31 because of his use of social media and the way he was able to talk to people. And that is what fascinates me, is that you have a guy 5-6 years ago, relatively, just no one's really talking about him. Mm-hmm. And then he gets on TikTok and he posts these videos of these debates on these college campuses. And it's having millions and millions and millions of views. And so even the president, his supporters were crediting Charlie Kirk for turning the votes in that direction. So more so whether or not you agree with him or not, I'm bringing up the power of social media here.
Yeah.
How he was able to galvanize that platform and do it in a way at that age to connect to young people.
Yeah.
So, social media is just a very interesting thing. I mean, you can use it for your advantage in many ways, right?
Totally.
Another thing, too, that I wanted to bring up was yesterday we had an event which Jennifer Dowling went to, and it was a vigil for Charlie Kirk. And she interviewed several people, which I understand that you have talked to in the past as well.
Yeah, as it turns out, just watching the audio.
So I just want to, I want to play the sound. So let's take a listen to what they had to say here.
College campuses are prided in our nation as being places of free speech and free thought and free exercise and the ability to engage with people who have different opinions than you. They might be able to stop his voice, but they're not going to stop all of our voices. We're getting louder than we were before, and we're not backing down.
Political violence is horrible, and that Charlie Kirk, I disagreed with him a lot, but he was a brilliant man.
We're here to remember a hero of the conservative movement, a hero of many young people, especially in America, Charlie Kirk, who was shot in the neck, absolutely tragic and horrific.
Okay, so you heard those three people. The first person we heard from was Pastor Russell Johnson. He's been on the news lately because of the fact that he is forming these, I don't want to say rallies, they're more like prayer vigils events that he's created here in the last couple of weeks or months. And I know it made headlines because you had protesters who showed up to Russell Johnson's event. But he's a local organizer. And do you think that he is your understanding of his group is that it's growing, or what's up with that group?
So if you're to go back and think about all the controversy that happened with that prayer group over on, and the counter protests that ensued where all these people were, clashing with SPD, and it appeared pretty violent way too, and there was controversy stemming from that, but that was at Cal Anderson Park.
Yeah.
Earlier this year. Then there was the so-called rattle in Seattle, which was saying, hey, you can't kick us out. We are conservative leaning. We are Christians. This is our stance, and we have any right, just as anybody else does in Seattle, to voice. Largely, the argument is free speech, and that's what you're going to hear from all of them. But I was at that rally outside Seattle City Hall, the Rattle in Seattle, and that was a direct pushback to the mayor, who had criticized the organizers of that prior event, one of which was Russell, who you just heard from there. And he is, I would say, like a religious magnet, like regionally, in terms of like, he's got followers in Portland, he is up and down kind of the upper left here, and holding events in Portland, in Seattle, very like liberal territory, and trying to draw contrary and drawing crowds and lots of supporters. So, I mean, there were hundreds of people at the one outside Seattle City Hall. And I did watch, like, there were the counter protesters who were really antagonistic, and same with the people. There were some people inside. You know, there's people that show up on both sides just wanting to fight, like typical. But he has really been in headlines lately locally, and he's doing a lot of work with young people on college campuses. I believe one of his churches is right by the University of Washington. So there is this movement to recruit young conservatives, young Christians, happening here locally, and that's who organized the vigil last night. That's who was speaking, very much in line with what we are seeing on the national stage with Charlie Kirk.
Right. And before, we wrap up here, I do want to mention kind of the latest on what's going on with the suspect, or at least a person of interest. As of this morning, they had a picture released of a guy that they released, and they're calling him a person of interest. And the fact that they reported that they had a rifle or I should say a weapon, a high-powered bolt-action rifle, that they found it in a wooded area near the site there. So they do have the rifle, so hopefully they'll be able to use that to connect the person responsible. But the fact that they still don't have someone at this hour, it's almost 12 o'clock on a Thursday, so I can tell you that we don't have a suspect right now, from my understanding. I'm like Googling it, right now, but that's what, to make sure, but that's what I saw before we came into this room to have this conversation. Hopefully that will change, that there's a picture now, so hopefully that will change.
Well, what's crazy, just thinking about watching that video, that beginning with what we talked about, that graphic video, it was a single shot.
Yeah.
It was a single shot, and I was listening to all sorts of analysts, like following the coverage yesterday. I was working on what we call our live desk, so I'm watching everything in real time, and everyone believes that it was a very disciplined person that was shooting it. Like, they knew what they were doing, they knew where to hit. So to find the gun, it seems like a very sloppy, contrary to to what we saw earlier, and that's what surprises me.
What surprises you?
Well, if it was like a single shot, the guy knew how to get out of there as soon as it happened, not fire more so that people can trace the activity, and then just leaves the gun in the woods.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, that's the question moving forward. Like, how do we
odd.
connect? That seems odd based on the prior behavior that we are understanding of just the shooter, without knowing anything about them, and just how that was carried out there at Utah Valley.
And the fact that they were saying how they believe this is a work of a professional because, again, that single shot, far away, they're on a rooftop, very similar to Butler, Pennsylvania, to what happened to, President Trump, but different in the sense that now these people are saying that this seemed more premeditated and cleaner and done by a professional. So we'll just have to
situation.
Right,
yeah,
exactly. Butler, Pennsylvania. But the fact that we're talking about those two incidents in just a short amount of time is wild to me. I feel like we're living in some wild times right now.
When we were talking this morning, I was just thinking back. I'm a history nerd, and I was saying, there was a time that right around the turn of the century, and by turn of the century I'm talking about like Gilded Age, we're moving into the 1900s, post-Civil War, where there were a lot of political assassinations in general. There was this rash of them between 1890 and 1914, and some people would call it like the golden age of assassination. It was really drawn by a large anarchist movement too that was going on, but we're talking about like Italian kings, Austrian, Hungarian empress, and then leading up to Franz Ferdinand. But there was, all of these were happening, these shootings, and and thinking about a U.S. president too. McKinley was in that time period as well. So it's just, I don't know, like, does this happen all at once? Are people inspired by other shooters or folks, or is this just because it's just, like you said, there was the shooting, when President Trump was shot in the air, and then there was the event with the Minnesota senators.
Senators, right?
And now
this, right?
Yeah,
and so it is a scary time, and it just when people, we weren't, around in the 60s, but people who were, I think they go back to that time when you had JFK, and then and then when MLK,
all the Kennedy, right?
Right. And so hopefully, I'm just hoping that we're not going into those times, and that's why I think it's just very important that everything is tempered down and that we choose our words wisely. And again, like, no matter, I started the podcast off saying this, we all can have opinions, but no one should die because of their opinions. And even people who, I don't even want to go into the whole social media thing, but there have been talk about the people who have been saying very callous things and terrible things after someone dies. You just have to look within yourself at that point,
even
because
think
that's
about
terrible.
the fanfare around Luigi Mangione.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's another assassination.
Absolutely.
When you think about that, so
a dad, a husband to somebody.
Yeah.
So we're just living in some weird times right now. But I wanted to have this conversation because I think it's important to know that we can all talk and have differences, but it's fine. It's okay. It's okay, and we can learn from each other. And maybe you can persuade the other person, to come your way. But it should never be, so divisive like this. And that's why I'm trying to bring this topic up, because when I talk to people that I have differing opinions with, I think I learned something from that person. I may not agree with that person, but I'm always learning something new from that person.
Well, and I think that's like our job too. And we may be like numb to finding new opinions because it's like what we have to do, mandated as journalists, and make sure we get both sides to the story.
Sure.
And so I think, we have to do that. That is part of our job description. And maybe we are lucky in that we are exposed to different point of views, and that's probably one of my favorite things about this job.
Yeah.
But I know there's so many of us that kind of stay in our little enclaves, and maybe we would if we weren't in this profession. So I feel like
got to challenge
it's
yourselves.
important now to do it just as us and journalists, and checking that we have both sides too for everything.
Absolutely. And I just thoroughly enjoyed this conversation with you, Lauren. I appreciate the time. I always love it when I can talk about things, and I learn from you too as well. So thank you for joining us on this podcast today. And don't forget, we have new episodes of Seattle News Weekly podcast. It comes out every Thursday. You can watch them on Fox local app, the fox13seattle.com, of course, and on the Fox 13 Seattle YouTube channel. You can also listen to us anywhere you get your podcasts. Hopefully, you got something from this podcast, and we will have another one coming up next Thursday. All right, have a good day, everyone.
Ciao.
Seattle News Weekly is available wherever you get your podcast.